Just before we get started with this video, I do want to say that it's brought to you by me, or rather another channel I do called Business Blaze. It's about business, but it's interesting. It looks at the most epic failures and times that things went horribly wrong, but also little known successes. Generally, just the weirdest stuff that I could find from the business world, like why the £50 note in the UK is kind of just for criminals. Stuff like that. I'm going to link to it below, and let's get into it. Because today we're answering a viewer question. Amanda R asks us, how exactly do penises become erect? Here we go. The physical response causing a flaccid noodle to become al dente can be mediated by both physical stimulation, known as somatic, or autonomic, involuntary processes like arousal from seeing or thinking about an attractive person, or a combination of both of these. But as to exactly what's happening under the surface, to begin with, the skin of One-Eyed Willy envelops three spongy-like cylinders. Two cylinders, known as corpora cavernosa, reside on the top and on the sides. These two contain several spaces within them called sinusoids. These fill with blood when Mr. Happy is at his happiest. These are connected in a Swiss cheese-like fashion, allowing blood to flow evenly through them. One cylinder, known as the corpus spongiosum, sits below these two and contains the urethra. This is the tube where pee and sperm come out of, hopefully not at the same time, although if you're into that, well, I'm not judging. In any event, the three cylinders are separated by a tissue known as Buck's fascia, named after a 19th century dude by the name of Gurdon Buck. How are we going to honor this guy? We'll name a bit of the penis after him. These are surrounded by a tissue called the tunica albuginea. When the Bone Ranger is not living up to his name, these three cylinders contain a small amount of blood, enough to keep the tissue supplied with semi-adequate amounts of nutrition, though there is some evidence that regular erections are a good thing in order to help supplement this. Whatever the case there, this flaccid state is only contracted moderately. If you were to make the appendage cold, like when in a swimming pool, it can become severely contracted by shunting more blood away from Action Jackson. Oh, once the brain releases specific neurotransmitters, which we'll talk about more in a minute, Captain Winky salutes. Several events take place at approximately the same time to make this magic happen. The first is relaxation of the smooth muscles within the corpora cavernosa. Then the arteries and smaller arterioles within them dilate, becoming bigger and increasing the blood flow to Wang Jiangsheng? I have no idea who that is, but we must really be running out of names for the penis at this point. By this point, the blood starts to become trapped by and within the expanding pockets of the corpora cavernosa. This constricts the veins against the surrounding tunica tissue, creating a situation similar to stepping on a garden hose. This decreases the amount of blood that can exit the dong and begins to increase the pressure within it, causing it to first become half-cocked. But a boom. For reference here, one of the strongest fascia in the human body, the tensile strength of the tunica within the penis is around 1,200 to 1,500 millimeters of mercury. For reference, the average human blood pressure is around 120/80 millimeters of mercury. To fully salute, things are, of course, helped along should specific somatic nerves be stimulated, i.e. a bit of physical stimulation, causing the muscles within the cavernosa to also contract and the erection to become, well, hard wood. The corpus spongiosum and the head of the penis also experience an increase in blood flow, but since the tunica is thin over these areas, the veins don't get compressed as much, and this allows more blood flow out, about 1/3 to 1/2 the pressure of the two corpora cavernosa. So that's how the pleasure pump gets ready to pump some half babies. So what is actually happening in the brain to trigger this cascade of cockery? The moisture missile reactions during erection and while flaccid are completely controlled by the central nervous system, the CNS. The CNS can be affected by two types of nervous system, the involuntary autonomic nervous system and the somatic voluntary. How the CNS uses signals from these nervous systems is a complex web of interconnecting reactions. For ease of understanding, and so we don't all put you to sleep, we will consensually touch on the two main types of reactions at a high level. When the knob is being polished, the nerve that sends these signals to the brain to begin releasing neurotransmitters is the pudendal nerve. This nerve also travels to the back part of the scrotum and the rectal nerve. When a guy sees an attractive person, or maybe just imagines one, his involuntary nervous system, involving his sympathetic flight or fight nervous system and parasympathetic feed and breed system, begin to create the physical reactions inside his corpora cavernosa via the cavernosa vagus nerves. No matter the cause, be it touch or involuntary, when the CNS senses a reaction from either system, it releases several neurotransmitters, including nitric oxide, dopamine, acetylcholine, serotonin, and noradrenaline. Also, some peptides like oxytocin are involved, all combining to cause the relaxation of the smooth muscles around the corpora cavernosa, inducing the meat show to begin. Of course, due to the fact that there are several different types of systems and numerous different neurotransmitters involved, as every guy knows, an erection doesn't necessarily have to happen just because a person is aroused. Guys can have nocturnal erections that happen while sleeping. Electrical stimulation can also cause erections. There can also be reflexive erections that are caused by damage to the spinal cord, known as priapism. Certain drugs that affect neurotransmitters can also cause a lack of or an increase in erections. This is, for example, why some guys occasionally get erections at the dentist while inhaling nitric oxide. Or at least, that's the story that we're going to stick to. Not my experience. Incidentally, like any muscle tissue within the body, the ones in the penis require periodic episodes of exercise to maintain their shape and size. Yes, even length. Thus, regular erections are needed to maintain a constant size. More specifically, according to Dr. Tobias Kohler, assistant professor of urology at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine, infrequent erections can lead to a penis being 1 to 2 centimeters shorter than if they happen regularly. He also states a vacuum pump will take the place of a natural erection in maintaining these muscles. Unfortunately for penis pump makers, they do not, however, make your disco stick larger than if you simply had regular natural erections. And now for some bonus facts. Ever wonder how dick came to be short for Richard? Well, want to know more? The name Richard is thought by most etymologists to derive from the Proto-Germanic rikhatu, meaning more or less hard ruler. Rik meaning ruler and hatu meaning hard. You might think from Richard meaning hard ruler and being a man's name that Dick being a nickname for Richard probably comes about for pejorative reasons, borrowing from one of the other meanings of dick, such as dick as in jerk or dick as in penis. However, the first record of dick meaning jerk didn't come out until a few hundred years after its association with Richard, and the first record of it referring to a penis wasn't until the 1890s as a British Army slang term. Exactly how that latter meaning came about isn't known, being a slang term that was considered somewhat uncouth to put on paper. Because of that, dick meaning penis probably had been around a while before the 1890s, but not nearly long enough before to have contributed to the Richard Dick connection. How Dick became a nickname for Richard is unknown and is one of those knee bone connected to the thigh bone type progressions, somewhat similar to how the word soccer came about from association football. In this case, due to people having to write it by hand, shortened versions of Richard were common, such as RIC, Rick, or Rich. This in turn gave rise to nicknames like Richie, Rick, Rickett, among others. People also used to like rhyming names, thus sometimes someone who was called Rich might further be nicknamed Hitch. Thus, Richard to Rick with a K gave rise to nicknames like Dick and Hick around the 13th century. While few today call Richards Hick, the nickname Dick has stuck around, and of course it has come to mean many other things as well. Its persistence, as associated with Richard, is probably in part because around the 16th century, Dick started to be synonymous with man, lad, or fellow, sort of a general name for any Tom, Dick, or Francis, which, by the way, appears in Shakespeare's Henry IV, written in the late 16th century, with Dick at this point firmly established as an everyman name. It may well be that this association with man is in turn how Dick eventually came to mean penis. And now for another bonus fact. Next up, speaking of erectile tissue, it turns out that you have some in your nose, which is why about 85% of humans breathe out of one nostril at a time. It's absolutely true. You can try this. The chances are you're like, right now, it's my right nostril. There you go. Even more interesting is that the pattern of switching from breathing out of one nostril to the other happens in a cyclical fashion, with about 4 hours or so between each switch, although this can vary from person to person and vary based on your body position or nasal congestion. The first known instance of someone studying this nasal cycle was German nose specialist Richard Kaiser in 1895. How your nose accomplishes this switch is, as alluded to, via erectile tissue in your nose, which is very similar to the erectile tissue in a penis, penis or the mini penis known as the clitoris. In a nutshell here, erectile tissue will swell up in one nostril, mostly blocking it, and at the same time, the erectile tissue in the other nostril will shrink, opening it up for breathing. Even more interesting is that depending on which nostril you are predominantly breathing out of at any given moment, it seems to greatly affect your body and brain. For instance, a study in 1988 showed that breathing through your right nostril significantly increases blood glucose levels, while breathing through your left nostril has the opposite effect. It is speculated from this that abnormal nasal cycles, such as breathing through your right nostril for many years without a switch, may be one of the contributing factors in certain cases of diabetes. Another study in 1993 showed that when you are breathing through your right nostril, you will use significantly more oxygen than when breathing through your left. Most interestingly of all, yet another study published in 1994 showed that when you're breathing through your left nostril, the right hemisphere of your brain will be more active or dominant, and vice versa when you're breathing through your right nostril. Even though this switching happens naturally in a cyclical fashion, you can affect it in more ways than just plugging one nostril or the other to force breathing through the one you want. If you lay down on one side or the other, after around 12 to 15 minutes, the erectile tissue in the nostril on that side will begin to swell up, and the other side will decrease its swelling, so that if you are lying on your left side, then your right nostril will open up and your left nostril will close up. It is thought that this nasal cycle could be the reason that when you sleep on your side, you will often switch sides throughout the night at very regular intervals, even if you weren't in the slightest bit uncomfortable. It could just be that your body needs to switch which nostril it is breathing in or out of, so you feel the urge to roll over to your other side while you are asleep. So, I really hope you found that penis-filled video interesting. If you did, smash that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe, brand new videos. Also, check out that channel I mentioned at the beginning, Business Blaze. It's like this, but it's a little more laid back. A lot more laid back, actually. Find it linked to below. And thanks for watching.